How are you? Oh yeah, you're on mute.
Yeah, there you go. Hi.
Hey,
Hi.
how's it going?
How are you guys?
Nice to see you.
Yeah, you too. Everyone's surviving, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
As best as can be expected.
Yeah. How about you guys, Lisa? Have you been doing online meetings?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna just move. Yeah, we have been doing online meetings. I'm hoping that maybe June will be our last one, and maybe we might meet in the clubhouse starting in July. But you know, with precautions.
Right.
I mean, normally we get about 12 to 15 people that join, so I think we can spread out pretty good in that clubhouse. So, sorry.
That's great. Awesome.
Yeah, so we're pretty excited about that. I just took on the role as president starting actually June 1. When is that? A couple days. So.
Oh, great. Congratulations.
Yeah,
Awesome.
definitely. So yeah, I'm excited about that. So it's just a little challenging, I think, with Zoom meetings, you know, especially when it's, you know, you're trying to kind of build up membership.
It is.
Happens, right?
It is, but it also really increases your reach, and I really think the Zoom meetings are here to stay regardless.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, for sure. Yeah.
They definitely will replace phone calls for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
Why weren't we doing this before? We had the technology, right?
Yeah.
If you had asked me 6 months ago if I would ever utilize something like this for business, I would have shot it down like in a heartbeat, but I'm a little addicted to it now. I don't, you know, a lot of remote meetings, and if I can't see somebody, like now I'm really hurting for it. Like the phone call just isn't cutting it.
Oh, exactly. I agree.
There you go. This is the moment to show your pets and show us. This is the moment. Bring them on.
This is the pet moment.
So then later we get into the business. So now.
Can everybody hear me now? I thought I was muted.
Yes, we can hear you. Hi.
Hi,
Good morning.
I'm
Thank you
Norma
so much
Gupta.
for joining us.
I'm one of the members.
Great.
Hi.
So as I was saying before, it's 10:04, and then what we're gonna do is that we're gonna wait a little bit till 10:10, because we know sometimes people get difficulties connecting with the internet, and then after that we're just gonna keep going. We have more SVPs, so then we are kind of waiting a little bit to give those folks time, you know, to jump into the phone call. Yes.
Thanks,
so thank you so much for your patience, and you know, this is a good moment to connect.
And I wanted to thank you also because you accepted the invitation for Women's Leadership Summit. But unfortunately, unfortunately we have to cancel it.
Yes, I know, but then we will make it happen, you know, in the future. But yes, of course, keep me posted with that. We will definitely love to be part of that. Yeah. Awesome. So then let me keep track. We have 14 people. 10:05.
Does anyone else want to introduce themselves? I see Jay and Casillas.
Casillas.
Welcome.
Casillas, go for it. Hi.
Hi. I'm a recent alumni grad from Vanguard University, and I studied under Dr. Sandra Morgan. So she sent me the link, and she just really encouraged me to log in and just meet everybody and network. And I've watched you, Janae, some of your videos and just your stories. So I'm excited to see.
Nice to meet you.
Welcome. Yeah,
Sandy, I said hi.
Welcome. Hi.
Just listened to one of her podcasts last week.
Very cool. And Jay?
Very busy, doing so much.
Hi guys.
Hi.
It's actually Joanne.
Oh,
And
Joanne.
it's Joanne.
Okay.
But I'm also called Denise, so JD. I interned with the UNA OC chapter when I was doing my undergrad at Cal State Long Beach, and I became a member, and I graduated from Chapman Grad School International Affairs 2014. So I've kind of just kept in touch, and this is something I'm interested in maybe becoming a part of. So I got an email and I signed up.
Great.
Great.
Awesome.
Great.
Well, welcome.
Great. Awesome.
Thank you.
Good
Glad
to
to
see
be here.
you again. Yes.
Hi there, and my name is Sheila Cook. I'm with Zonta also, and I've been on the line but couldn't figure out how to unmute and show my photo. So anyway, Lisa and I have known each other many years, and I've been the advocacy chair for the Orange County chapter for the last year, and then moving on to our District 9 chapter, which is about 24 offices in another month or so. So glad to be a part of this meeting. I've attended one or two other coffee talks as well. So anyway, hello, nice to meet you all.
We've been the recipient of many of your holiday boxes, the shoe boxes over the years. So thank you for that.
Does Sheila or Lisa, does everybody know Zonta? Do you just want to give a quick, overview of Zonta?
Hi, Lisa. Lisa.
Sorry, trying to get it off of mute. Yeah, so Zonta is an international organization. Sheila and I belong to a local club that is based, it's called the Newport Harbor chapter. We actually have our clubhouse based in Costa Mesa. And we internationally, as an organization, advocate for young women and girls, young girls. Our international campaigns include things like, sexual violence, human trafficking. Last year, our big campaign and going into this biennium as well is child marriage. So we're really excited. Sheila is starting an advocacy project with a couple of the other gals in our membership that will be doing billboards and actually posters on the Orange County buses, OCTA, right?
Oh,
OCTA.
that's great.
Yeah, so
Awesome.
Sheila can tell you a little bit more about that, but that's kind of a huge campaign we're doing now. We are a club that gives out grants and scholarships. I know that many of the organizations in the community have been fortunate enough to kind of benefit from some of our grants. And as well, recently, we just awarded an emergency grant to Mary's Path because we had a little money left in our funds for last year. So our year closed out May 31. So we gave them an emergency fund for during this COVID time. So yeah, we're really, really excited. We're very, very fortunate with our organization that we have money and to distribute to other organizations, as well as the members like to do service projects and things. So yeah, we serve meals, Wise Place, and just different things. As Jeanette mentioned, we give put together kits and things like that. So yeah,
that's so cool. Well,
yeah, it's a great organization.
Zonta is one of the key members of our Council of Organizations, where we try to connect organizations with similar causes and all help promote each other's interests and share even meetings like this. So yeah,
right. We've done a coffee talk together in person. We hope maybe we can kind of revitalize that going into next year. And we also have a seat at the UN. So that's how we kind of, it's a great melting of minds, I guess, really, that we're fortunate that we can share that with you guys now.
Yeah.
Excellent, Lisa. Thank you so much. So now I'm actually want to start. Maybe later we're going to have more time to talk a little bit about the organizations that we are representing and what we are even here, which I think is actually really interesting to see new faces, familiar faces, all coming together during this morning. I really want to appreciate your time. You're taking your morning here today, sharing our coffee to learn about a topic that is really close to my heart. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Isabel Tridel, and as you can tell from my accent, I am a foreign person. I was born and raised in Colombia, and then I came here to the US 8 years ago. And currently, I am the president of the United Nations Association. So before moving forward, I wanna let everyone know that Currently, we are recording, so if anyone has any problem with that, please let us know. But we just want to make sure that, of course, we keep this material so we can spread it, and then we can share these vital stories that we are today talking about. So then, as I was telling, I'm part of the United Nations Association, and a little bit of what is our organization about. So then the United Nations Association, our main goal is to inspire, to educate, and to mobilize Americans with the vital work of the United Nations. So that's what we do. We are advocating and working toward the United Nations mission. So we have currently more than 200,000 members across the US. We have 200 chapters, and we're talking that here in Southern California, we have 12 chapters from San Diego to Santa Barbara. And from those chapters, I'm currently representing the Orange County chapter. And something that is really interesting about our membership is that actually 60% of our membership, not just regionally, but also nationally, it's about younger people who are younger than 26 years old. So it's actually really interesting to see how more and more younger individuals are getting inspired and are advocating and taking actions. So here I am really thrilled and excited. I'm actually really, really happy with today's coffee talk. And I'm gonna share a little bit about Janet's bio, which is actually really impressive. So I'm really, as I said, beyond happy and excited with all her work and inspired. So Janet Kreitner is a best-selling author. We can actually even talk about this one because it's amazing. Yes, she wrote a book as well. She's the founder of Grandma's House of Hope, as well as server of other incredible outreach programs. She has overcome many trials that have helped her grow and fuel her desire to help others. Janet is the great example of turning life hardest lessons into life greatest blessings. After repressed memories of childhood sexual abuse surfacing in her mid-30s, Janet experienced a series of unfortunate and catastrophic events, including a relationship with a controlling man that ended up badly. Janet found herself homeless in California with a young son to take care of after hopeless months of struggling to survive on the streets and bouncing from motel to another. An angel entered her life, a man she had met briefly. He said something, and then what happened was that his faith in her and her unconditional hope he offered them allowed Janet's land back on her feet. And eventually he became her husband, which is actually, this is a great story. Today, Jenny wants her programs to offer others the help and hope that she once so desperately lacked in her life. The support that allowed her to overcome immense trials and realize her immense potential. So right now we want to share a video with all of you that is actually going to tell us a little bit about the story of also how everything started, and then we're going to dig into more details. So if you please play it right now. And now.
People ask me how this whole Grandma's House of Hope thing got started. And really it started after I was abandoned by a domestic violence partner in Anaheim with my 5-year-old son. He literally left us on the corner of Catella and Harbor with 2 suitcases and $20. And there was a journey involved that a lot of people got involved, pulling me back from that homeless place I was in and getting back on my feet. And after I got back on my feet and was in a healthy relationship, I got involved in a church, and God really started to speak to my heart about how I needed to forgive those that I was holding accountable for my own pain. And one of the folks that was really on my heart was my mom. My mom had turned her back on me when I was homeless, so I started on a journey to find my mom. And by the time I found her, she was quite ill. She had succumbed to early onset Alzheimer's disease, and she was in a skilled nursing facility all the way out in Simi Valley. And literally, when we walked into that nursing home the first time, my mom was curled up in a fetal position at 62 years old. eating out of a G-tube coming out of her stomach. And I remember going home that night to my saint of a husband who was involved in my personal rescue and asking him, Pat, can I bring my mom home and take care of her? And he didn't even blink an eye. He said, absolutely, Janae, bring her home. So within 6 weeks, we had my mom home living with us. And 6 weeks after that, it was Thanksgiving. And my mom was sitting at the dining room table eating a full-on Thanksgiving meal with us with no assistance. I mean, it was a miracle. So after my mom passed away, there was a lady that used to sit at the bus stop near our home. So we brought Harriet into our home, and she lived with us for about 6 months before we were able to find her an apartment that she could afford. And then it was the next person who came into our home, and the next person who came into our home. And one day I looked around and there were more people living with us than in this nucleus of our own family. So we sort of looked at each other, Pat and I, and said, well, let's get out of the way. And from 2007 to 2017, we went from 10 beds to 120 beds serving the homeless. Another one of our programs that's super important to me is Nana's Kids, because I remember what it was like to be a single mom renting a motel room for the night and not having enough money left over to pay for a meal for my son. And so just out of a family project, we started to pack 10 bags of food once a week as a family and take it to a nearby motel for the kids that live there. And that program became one of our offshoots for Grandma's House of Hope when we became a nonprofit. And since 2017, we have served over 2 million meals to children living in motels who otherwise would not eat over the weekends and during the summer months when the school cafeteria is closed. Our HopeWorks Education and Enrichment Center is on site at a very low-income Section 8 housing complex where we serve 45 families with over 90 children with after-school support, homework club, adult education, early childhood development, and health and wellness classes. We are super proud that 16 of our residents there are continuing their education in college and university, and also that we have provided a neighborhood environment. There are absolutely no gang members or gang affiliations on this property. Grandma's House of Hope is responding by working with as many people as we possibly can during the coronavirus outbreak. Our children's program is still up and running, and we need your help specifically to help us feed more children over the weekends and during this break when they don't have access to the school cafeteria. Our HopeWorks program continues to try to serve the families that are in our Section 8 low-income housing project, but our emergency shelter and transitional homes are still open. We are still trying to do the best we can with universal precautions, taking into consideration the trauma that our clients have already undergone and that they continue to go through during this very difficult time. We thank you so much for supporting us. We ask for your help now more than ever. If there was ever a time we needed those of you who believe in us, trust in us, and pray for us, it would be now. So please spend a moment, thoughtfully think about how you might support Grandma's House of Hope right now.
Well, so now I really want to, open the space to start digging a little bit more and then talk to Janine. That again, thank you so much for letting us, know more about your story and how everything started. I know the first question that you always have is, how you started, what was your story? And I actually want to start with something different and then we can dig more. Grandma's House of Hope, what is the origin of the name?
Well, it goes back to that period of time when my family took in my mother, who I believe had a very rough upbringing as well. So she grew up in an era where child abuse wasn't spoken of, but as I took care of her for those 5 years, most of which she was pretty uncommunicative. I knew from some of my interactions with her that she had some deep secrets as well. So going from, being abandoned by my step family in this skilled nursing facility and then coming home to us and watching what it was like for her to receive unconditional love, again, maybe for the first time in her life. We watched a person who didn't know who I was. She never did understand that I was her daughter. She just knew I was Janae. And I knew her as Dorothy. She didn't respond to mom, ever to me, but you know, there was a moment in time when I was tucking her into bed at night, and I just said, you know, I love you, Dorothy. And she kind of opened up her eyes and came in the room and said, I love you too, sweetheart. And watching that happen from a woman who did nothing but moan and cry and rock to a woman who was receiving and responding to love, that journey of healing is what really locked in the name. So even though she's my kid's grandma, right? But that room sort of became grandma's room after that. And that's where Harriet lived. And that's where, you know, we saw more restoration with families. So Grandma's House of Hope seemed to be an appropriate name.
Wow, yes, really interesting, the origin. And as I said, maybe that was never like the first question. But then going back, we know, of course, that you have these, a lot of challenges in your life. And then you felt that, of course, you were kind of abandoned with a son. And that was actually when you were in your 30s. And then you have to suddenly figure out a way to overcome everything and even find a place where to sleep, what to eat. Tell us a little bit about it. Tell us about how was that first step, even moving forward, because I know that a lot of people who actually are experiencing domestic violence, they don't know how to give that first step, because it's really dragging. It's like a hole that you don't even know, because you feel that you feel insecure and you feel lonely, and then you feel even like going outside on your own is going to be even harder than what you're living now.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the very first night that Jeremy and I were out there, we took, it was actually raining. It was January 24th, 1994, and it was raining that day. Never rains in Southern California except the day I get homeless. But he and I took shelter in a phone booth on the corner there of Cattell and Harbor, when there were still phone booths there. And we sort of huddled in with our 2 suitcases just outside the door. And after a while, you know, the fireworks across the street at Disneyland, it seemed so very surreal. But people were starting getting a little angry with us taking up the phone. So they started banging on the door, and I got really frightened for me and for Jeremy. And this little angel came from the back, real tall, skinny girl. Her name was Karen. She was a prostituted woman who said, come on out of there. I'll take you to my place. I'll, you know, let's get you set for the night. And she took us back to what used to be the Golden Forest in Anaheim, just down the street, you know, a real seedy motel at the time, a lot of drug activity in that, you know, complex. I didn't know that until, you know, of course I'd been out in a while, but you know, this prostituted woman took a heart for us and kept us safe that very first night. Kind of funny afterthought to that is she sort of robbed me blind overnight too. She took a lot of my stuff, but in fact, I woke up and she was wearing my clothes. I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. But you know, she gave me a bouncing off place. She gave me a moment to breathe. And of course, the following months were very difficult, trying to maneuver how I could best care for Jeremy and try to see our way through this. But I was in a lot of pain, and I was very distrustful, as you can imagine, just coming out of 3 years in a dark place with this man. And so I guess to kind of wrap that in, you know, to what's going on today, I mean, we've been very alarmed at the fact that we are getting fewer domestic violence calls and fewer reports of child abuse during COVID-19 because they've been locked away with their abusive partners for all this time and afraid to go outdoors. You know, the mind games that can go on between an abuser and a survivor and a victim. You know, the kids, we don't have eyes on them right now, which is really our biggest concern throughout this virus, is that we're not seeing the abuse that's happening. So all reporting of child abuse and domestic violence calls are way down.
That's actually really interesting that you're touching base on that, because the intimate partner violence, which is the IVP, of course, that's the closest that we have. You're living under the same roof you're sharing everything, and you're even tied to this person economically. And then of course, a lot of people, they have lost their jobs and they are kind of hopeless, thinking like, I don't have anywhere else to go, so I'd rather stay here because this is better than going out. So I know that there was like a campaign around, and it was like a lot of women, they were actually going into pharmacies and they were using the code of mask 19, which is actually this code when someone was in an environment that it was an abusive environment. Do you know what is the current situation in Orange County, and if we have like a similar code and what is happening?
That's a good question. I haven't heard about the mask 19 code. I do know that the texting line for human trafficking, where we used to have, the phone number that people used to call, the text line has been really successful because it's very discreet, and they know how to suspend the call if anybody, disrupts the situation or whatnot. So I test drove it myself, like trying to figure out how it worked, and I was super impressed with that. That way of communicating that you're in trouble, because I think it was an important step to catching our younger generation and the way that they most likely communicate. It's much easier to be a little bit at a distance and text about what's going on versus actually speaking the words out loud, because it's a very silent, invisible, thing that goes on.
Yeah, I'm aware that in the hotline, in the website, actually, they actually have a really interesting marketing strategy that they said, get help without saying a word. It's kind of asking for help in a silent way, because you're really desperate and you're really afraid of even speaking up, and even any word can be, can really jeopardize your life. So that's actually really interesting, as you're saying that you even tested yourself. So with these numbers that you said, that the problem is that internally in, I know Orange County, of course, we have a lot of cases going on, because I know that you guys take care of people who are really vulnerable, that they're being exposed in human trafficking, that they're being exposed with domestic violence. But then with the coronavirus right now, what is the current situation? How are you guys dealing with that? Did you have to start increasing the capacity? Did you have to start bringing more funds because you need to increase the response on foods with one of the programs of Nana Kids, which I'm aware you have 3 different core programs. So then how you're running each one right now, and which one right now is in more need because of the current crisis?
Sure, it would be really hard to choose one, quite honestly. But the video there at the end of what you just saw, I was looking at myself. I look pretty darn tired in that video at the end. It was following the first 13 days of the virus, where me and my executive team literally worked 16-hour days for 13 days straight, trying to figure out how to be in touch with the best resources between the World Health Organization and CDC, get the right guidelines in place to protect not only our participants, but our staff, and whether or not we could utilize volunteers during this time. So we regularly run with over 4,000 volunteers every year. So not being able to access our volunteers, put a lot more pressure on staff, particularly around our feeding program. And I would say that we actually couldn't take more intakes in our shelter program during that time. We had to figure out how to distance those that were in our shelters. And that meant, and sometimes we were giving up beds and freeing up space. So luckily at the time it hit, we never put anybody out on the street, but we did have to put a hold on doing any new intakes until we could, set up an isolation room at each one of our 17 sites. And then we made the decision to open up a COVID-19 isolation recovery home all by itself. So I had recently rented a home, a 5-bedroom home, for the purposes of a new transitional home for human trafficking specific clients. And that grant from OVC got put on hold due to COVID. So we had the property and nothing to do with it at the time. So it kind of dovetailed really well into what our needs were. So that house is now open and running. we obviously, you know, did all of the social distancing we could. We, you know, used masks. We, you know, tried desperately to get supplies in an environment where at the beginning you just couldn't find them. So it took a little while to get that going, and we were concerned that we might see an uptick of the virus in our homes. But to date, we've had no positive tests from our clients or from our staff, which is you know, we have a lot of older people in our program. So whatever, you know, the choices that we made from the beginning following the advice of CDC and WHO definitely had an impact. But we stopped using bunk beds. You know, there's no way to social distance in a bunk bed. So any of the rooms that had bunk beds in them, and typically we run a bedroom with a bunk and a twin in it. So the 3 people that used to stay in that room were now 2, and we flipped their head to toe so that instead of having 2 heads against the wall, we had 1 head, and then the other one slept the other way. So we could in that environment and kept everything as clean as we could. But we had, you know, there's also just staff, like, and the concern and fears that your staff have about showing up to work when you're an essential service and you're in a vulnerable, high-risk population. So we saw at first a lot of fear from staff and a hesitancy to show up. We developed a level 1, 2, and 3 staffing chart, depending on where we were at in the virus contagion. And you know, at first we started with kind of a skeleton staff, and then as people became more educated about what was going on, they felt more comfortable coming back to work. So we had 4 people take FFCRA. We had 4 people resign, a lot of family pressure to, you know, just leave our organization because of the population we serve. And that was pretty rough. And we had a couple of people tested, but nobody, you know, is actually testing positive. So that was a good thing. That's our housing program. Our community center pretty much had to shut down. So for the first month, we were only delivering food to the client, the families at our Hope Works Center. And that's been a huge help to the families to be able to give them and supplement their food because they weren't able to get out and get it. And then we started to develop a Zoom club with the kids so that we could stay in touch, and little packets would go out with the food, and the kids would have some, you know, creative play to get involved with. But our Nana's Kids program, which originally was designed to be a program that served children who were on the free lunch program at school and depended primarily on the school cafeteria as their primary source of food, that's where we saw an enormous need for additional help. So prior to COVID-19, we were delivering about 450 bags of food a month, each one containing about 21 meals. And they were specifically for kids over the weekends and during the summer breaks and whatnot when the school was out of session. When COVID hit, the requests for this program skyrocketed. This next month, we'll be delivering, instead of 450 bags of food, 3,200 bags of food.
Wow.
So we were able to receive some good funding for that because it wasn't just packing more food bags. Probably the biggest concern we had was just being able to access food.
Mm-hmm.
Because limits were being placed on how many items you could buy. I mean, we needed 100 boxes of individual packets of oatmeal every month, you know, cases from Costco. And when you could only buy 2, that we either needed a legion of people shopping for us and picking up, you know, 1 more item, or we had to figure something out. And we were very fortunate to get some funding from the Anaheim Community Foundation through one of our funding partners, Cheeky Monkey, through the Orange County Community Foundation. So we had food. I mean, we had money for food, but again, we had to figure out how we were going to get the food. So we partnered with actually the Bishop's Storehouse, which is a Church of Latter-day Saints program, where we were given eventually a $20,000 grant, which gave us access to their storehouse to be able to credit that grant towards food. And we've been heavily relying on that.
Mm-hmm. Great. So then let me ask you, because we know a little bit about the story, how you started. We know a little bit about the programs that you're running. I know you're running the Rescue and Restore House. You even mentioned the Nana's Kids, and then you have the Hope Works, which is actually the educational and the enrichment. Something that is really interesting and I love about something that I was reading about you guys is that you have this quote. You said, empowering the invisible. So tell us a little bit about more and why Grandma's House of Hope is different than other nonprofits.
Sure. Well, that phrase, empowering the invisible, that really kind of says it, because I remember that, you know, I had so much trauma when I was homeless. You know, you tried to get a story out of me about what was going on. I mean, if I were going to talk, I could talk for 45 minutes or an hour about all this stuff that had happened to me. And there were so many layers and so many complex issues going on with me that I felt like I can't say this in a sentence. And I don't feel like, you know, I felt like people would stop listening to me after about 2 minutes. And, you know, I felt too complicated and therefore I felt really invisible because I couldn't really share myself with anybody. So when Grandma's House started, we really wanted to take a look at populations that were truly slipping through the cracks, people who had difficulty accessing or didn't qualify for other programs because of the complexity of their cases. Which led us down avenues to address, you know, human trafficking for one thing, seniors with disabilities as another, women in their third trimester of pregnancy with high-risk pregnancies that couldn't get into other shelters that did pregnant programs because they hadn't been able to follow the course of the baby's health from the beginning. I found that, you know, one in particular case that really moved me was finding out that women who had cancer, who were diagnosed with cancer and were homeless, were being diagnosed in 3rd or 4th stage cancer because they didn't have any access to health care prior to their diagnosis, but 2, or B, they couldn't get treatment unless they had a place to live. So I think a lot of women were going to ERs for things that were treated for just with pain medications when the issue itself was so much deeper. But we would get calls from the hospital saying that, you know, we have Maria in our office, but she's saying that she doesn't have anybody to take her home from chemo because she doesn't have a home. So we have to cancel her treatment. And I'm like, that's crazy. So we started with just set a bedroom aside for women who had cancer. And then that program grew to us eventually dedicating this whole 6-bedroom house to it and adding people that had terminal illnesses or really chronic issues that didn't allow them to go out and try to find work as their first primary objective, which was very, very common in the shelter environment in those days. It was come in, get a job, get yourself set and go. And these women had to actively heal before they could get to that very first step. And there were really stringent requirements at other shelters about looking for work.
Wow. So great. You know, now looking to the future and the short run, it will be like kind of like saying Grandma's House of Hope. Now with the crisis, of course, coronavirus, in a year, what are your needs? But then in 5 years, how is it going to look like?
Oh my goodness. Trying to deal with the day-to-day right now. And I wanted to add one more thing, if I may, on the last question.
Yes, sure, definitely.
Of invisible populations, because I want to just kind of mention why Nana's Kids is a little unique from other feeding programs. And the reason for that is that we took an anti-bullying stance on food distribution. So where there were a lot of programs that were distributing food from school, you know, after school on Friday, and kids would take food home. The children we were finding in that program were getting bullied and teased because the second backpack they were carrying would get knocked on the ground. Kids would notice that they were receiving some help, and then that kid never told us again that they were hungry and became invisible. So our program was deliberate about taking the food to where the children were in an after school program where the food could be handed off to mom or dad or auntie or whoever, and the kid wouldn't have to take on that potential embarrassment. And again, we were trying to really solidify the help to these kids who relied on the school cafeteria and filling the gap of the weekends and the summer months. Just the way that that we address the invisible question.
Yeah.
But so your question was, where are we going to be at in a year with?
So then, yeah, so then this, the last question, because this is how I want to close, and then we can move into a Q&A, so then we can hear some questions from our participants. So then this will be more about the future. So then I want to think about short run will be like more like a year, which I know, of course, we're dealing with the coronavirus. But then later will be more like the future. And then this one, because I know we don't know what is going to happen in the future, but then that will be more connected to your dream, you know, like how you dream. What is your biggest dream of Grandma's House of Hope, like from 5 years from now? We can take it from that perspective.
Okay, all right, that I can do. I don't know how coronavirus is going to end up. I wish I had the magic answer to that, but you know, I'm planning on kind of stepping away from the CEO role in the next 18 months or so and into just development work. But so kind of my swan song, if you will, the direction that I want to take Grandma's House of Hope is to address the issue of senior homelessness. So 50% of the people that are out on the street right now are over the age of 50, but more alarming than that, half of them became homeless for the very first time after they turned 50. So these are people who had careers, who had stable housing for the first half century of their life, and are now facing a life on the streets because they've run through their unemployment, they've run through their any kind of savings that they have, and now they're waiting for the magic 62 button to be pressed when they may or may not have Social Security to tap into. We know that this population, because we've been watching it for the last several decades, this group of people is going to triple in the next 6 years. So I want to be ahead of that curve. When we talk about the curve, I want to be ahead of that curve and be sure that we're starting now to address that issue. So to that end, we've been approved by the Orange County Healthcare Agency to provide recuperative care, which we're going to be using as a model for a way to connect with seniors that have, you know, either short-term or long-term illness and funnel them into micro-community senior housing. So I don't think that the best answer for a lot of seniors is finding their own isolated apartment someplace, because a lot of the folks that have been with us that are older have found community and purpose with us. If they had family and connections, somebody would have stepped in and taken them in. They find us to be their family by the time they've been with us for you know, 6 to 9 months. They don't even want to go to their own apartment. They want to stay with their friends because they purpose there. So we're moving along, trying to find funding and support for these senior micro community houses where they pay a portion of their income if they have any to stay there, and we do the supportive housing element and provide, you know, anything that isn't coming from that sliding scale small program fee that they would pay. But I mean, I see this, we have 2 of those homes right now. We're going to be adding a 3rd, hopefully by the end of the year. But I just see a need for more and more and more of them. So the more that we can get involved in creating these spaces and putting 6 people to 8 people in a home versus 1 person in an apartment, we can address, you know, this really severe thing that's about to happen in the community with our seniors.
Yeah.
House of Hope, right?
That's, yes, yeah, that's the hope. And again, thank you so much for sharing and opening up with us and telling us about even, you know, your dream and what is going to happen next. So then I think at this point, I would love actually to open the floor, quote unquote floor, the virtual floor, so then we can start asking Janine a little bit more. So then I see like, yeah, go for it, Mishra. Yes. Oh, you can unmute yourself. You need to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Dr. Manorama Gupta, and I'm really impressed with Janet, whatever she's doing, because that was my dream. Unfortunately, I'm in Long Beach. I used to be in Orange County for 25 years. And when I was practicing, by practice, I used to be OBGYN and cosmetic surgeon. And one time I went to, about 2-3 months, I went to jail. As OBGYN, you see the women in jail who are pregnant, who are prostitute and everything. And there was this young girl who was used by her own boyfriend to do the prostitution. And she had 2 children. I counseled her, and I said, so she said, oh, I like you. I want to do whatever you want me to. So I said, promise me, you won't be prostitute again when you will get out. You know, because what you are going to tell your children? She said, well, I don't want to do it, but my boyfriend forced me to do it. I said, forget about that boyfriend. You are beautiful, you are young. Take your children and go someplace else. I want to do same thing which you are doing in Orange County and Long Beach. I'm a commissioner of health and human services over here. I have my non-profit organization, Global Peace Foundation, Inc. Our goal is to help children and family to stay away from drug and violence-related, alcohol violence-related abuse. And we do every year Women's Leadership Summit and World Peace Day celebration. As well as, you know, I fed homeless in Orange County for about 16 years. We donated toys, we donated clothes. I used to go to rescue mission and help them on Thanksgiving and Christmas. And for last 2 years, we collected money and donated our own money and paid more than 10,000 meals to send all over the world for those needy children. So, Janet, I need you as my mentor and tell me how we can start something in Long Beach.
I'm happy to have a conversation with you. Actually, Barbara, my assistant, and I have talked quite a bit about like another thing that I want to accomplish. My second book will be about how to start your own Grandma's House of Hope style kind of community. So know that that's in the works. Can't give you a publishing date at all right now, but it is important to me that we can replicate this program and that people all over the United States would have an opportunity to set up even just one Grandma's House of Hope in every state would go a long ways to helping out. So happy to connect with you after this meeting. Let's we can spend some time.
Okay, I can either give you my. So I don't know. Let's ask Isabel. How should I connect with her?
You can connect with Barbara and she will connect. She'll put us together.
Okay. Should I give you my email or my cell phone number and you can connect with me?
Barbara?
Where is Barbara?
Barbara.
Yes.
You don't have to give it here, but we'll have your information through Isabel. Isabel, you have a list of emails?
Yeah.
Get your email from there and we'll connect with you.
Yeah. We'll
Okay.
do that.
Thank you, Barbara. I really appreciate it. It's a wonderful talk which you gave. And it touched my heart because that's what I feel too, like same way. And I want to help people. And my problem is the Long Beach chapter is dead. They don't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I should join the Orange County chapter to keep on coming over there. What do you think, Isabel?
Yeah, we're trying to do our best. So we have your information, and of course we will connect you with Barbara so then you can talk a little bit more about how to recreate and then expand what of course Grandma's House of Hope has created. Anyone has any other question, you can raise your hand. I'm not seeing anyone. I do still have more questions, so I can keep going.
There's questions in the
chat.
Would you like me to read them off?
Oh yeah, go for it. I don't see them, so I'm not seeing them. So you have the power with that. So I don't have the access to the chat with that. Yeah.
How many are you currently housing, and what is the ratio with women, children, and men?
So currently we have 189 beds in 17 units on 12 different properties. And the ratio is about a third men and 2/3 women. We actually don't, we take individual persons always with the common denominator that they're experiencing homelessness at this time. We don't have programs for children, but the way that we fill a gap in services is when a woman has had her children removed from her and is working to get them back, she has to get to 51% custody before she can be considered for a family program. So in the interim, though, there's several boxes they have to check off. You know, they each have an individual case plan about what they need to do, whether it be drug classes or counseling or whatever, anger management. But they also need to be living somewhere where the child can come to where mom's living, have a visit, which, you know, eventually goes into an overnight, goes into a weekend visit. And this is where we step in. So we allow for those visits to be on property. We supervise some moms to make sure that they're taking good care of their kids. They may or may not have a monitor come with them. But if they don't, we take a real vested interest in watching mom and how she's interacting with her children. And then once she gets that 51% custody, we refer her on to a family program where they will be able to, you know, like do childcare for the kids during the day and whatnot.
Barbara, do you want to read, because I don't have access to those. So do you want to read another question?
Yes. What advice would you give someone who is currently going through what you have experienced, or maybe advice to keep the faith or hope?
Everybody recovers and goes through a healing process that is uniquely their own. And the first step is feeling safe. So, and that sounds like it would be a simple thing to accomplish, but it's not, because there's so many things that hold you back that, you know, make you fearful of a safe place even. But the first step, you know, from my experience, the first step was allowing myself to trust someone enough to let them help me. And that was the man in the park that I met that listened to my whole story and didn't try to fix me. Big thing. He didn't like give me suggestions about what I could do and how I could, you know, blah, blah, blah. He just listened to me and let me share my story without trying to fix me. And that started to build a little bit of trust. I allowed him to give me a hand. And then you can't hurry recovery. The thing that held me back for a really long time was this common response I would get from people is like, wow, that happened a long time ago. Why can't you just get over it? And like, I was molested at 3 years old. I was trafficked at 6. And I repressed it until I was close to 35 years old. So when that stuff comes back up and hits you in the face, you know, pressure to get better fast is the last thing you want to hear. Like, because for me, it was like going through it for the first time. Remembering everything that happened when I wrote the book, I struggled because even more things came up that, you know, I hadn't remembered. So, and for me, I needed to find my faith in all of this. When I went through 3 years of putting that man through chaos because I just couldn't find anything to latch onto that helped me make sense of what had happened to me. And it was when I found my spiritual path and when I gave my life over to Christ, that gave me this illogical ability to just believe in the idea that that could exist and might be a way forward. And that little seed the size of a mustard seed allowed me to start accepting the phrase your sins being washed away, you know, stuck with me in a really emotional way. Like, can it happen? Does God really throw everything into the ocean and never bring it back up? And, you know, and once you've repented and, you know, and got it off your chest, is there a way forward? And I believed that. I held strong to it. And eventually that got me on the other side of it, to finding out that, well, this is how I can respond. I don't believe it's what happens to you in life that defines you, but how you respond to it. And that's the way I found my way forward, was to take what it happened to me and respond to it in a way that could not only heal myself, but heal others around me.
I want to touch base in something, because you mentioned the way that you move forward. And I know something really critical about domestic violence, of course, is physical, but then also there is psychological. How you help someone moving away from that environment when it's not as visible and tangible. There is no like a visual mark that you're being abused, but things are happening. And then you're taking longer to get out of that situation. How will be the way of approaching that and helping someone to get out of that, or to get yourself out of that?
It's hard for me to answer that, because I think it's different for every single person. But ultimately, it's gaining enough courage to take one step forward. And, you know, that first step forward may not work out. We have a lot of girls who come into our program that don't make it the first time through, but they took a step. You know, they're usually the girls that are like the most difficult to work with. Like, they're pushing us away, but they got there and end up washing out of the program within the first 30 days, but they come back. They come back. They've experienced that there is a way forward. They're not ready for it yet. You have to respect that. And when they are ready, we're standing there ready to bring them back in. So, you know, burn bridges at Grandma's House of Hope. We're all about grace and about second and third tries, because it just doesn't necessarily always work the first time you leave your husband or your abuser, or there's just so many things involved in every single one individual story. I can't give you a blanket answer to that.
I totally agree. So Barbara, if we have one more question, and then maybe, yeah.
Yes. Do you still have volunteers during the coronavirus? And how can people still help out with Grandma's House of Hope during this time?
Yes. The answer to that is we have allowed a certain number of volunteers to participate with us, particularly in our donation center and our Nana's Kids program. So we had a whole group of medical students who were, they couldn't go to school anymore. And so a group of them came out, really knew how to do the whole like cleaning thing as well. And they came out to our warehouse and helped pack all the bags for us, because we did need to kind of keep it to the same regular group, like not, constantly bringing in lots and lots of new people. But people also got involved by, yesterday we had these 4 little kids who had gotten on the phone with their mom from, I think it was an American Girl group. And they brought in cakes and cookies. They called See's Candy and got literally a pallet of See's Candy donated to them, and gathered all of their community together. They all masked up and gloved up, and they made these nice little packets of See's Candy for everybody. So those things being dropped give us a lot of hope. And we had people in Guatemala making us face masks. And I mean, there's so many ways that you can help remotely and then drop things off for us. It's truly amazing to see the outpouring of love and support from the community. So lots that we're starting to let more things happen now. We're looking for, in particular, looking for someone that would be interested to come in and assist us in reception, to help us answer the phones and run the front office. So yeah, all kinds of things that, that you can do. And our internship program is, I think, one of the best around, especially in our kids program.
Awesome. Great. So I think that from here, we're just gonna end it up. So then I wanna thank you all for your attendance. I wanna thank you all for your participation. I wanna thank you, Jenny, of course, again, for empowering us, empowering the invisible as well. That's really, you know, that's amazing. And before, I wanna ask you to give me a number from 1 to 33, because this is a virtual coffee talk. So we wanna treat one lucky winner to a virtual coffee. And if you give me a number from 1 till 33, and then whatever number you think.
Okay, let's make it 23.
Oh, 23. Awesome. Let's see, number 23. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, James Rock. Do we have James Rock, or he's not present?
Okay, let's go to 14.
Okay, 14. April Casillas. Yay! Yay, April. Yes, and you will be getting your virtual coffee. We're treating you. And then again, thank you so much for taking the time and spending time to making a difference. I think this is also a first step. Investing your time, learning more about how you can actually get involved. And I think that also our chapter in Orange County is about that. Acting locally, thinking globally, and that's what we wanted to bring Grandma's House of Hope to remind us that we still have hope. We still have a lot of things to work, but then again, we need to work together. So then we will be sending you guys some information so you can learn more about Grandma's House of Hope. You can learn more about how you can donate. You can donate your time. You can donate also money. So there are ways to, again, have actions and move forward and help them, you know, really, really, really bringing hope to the invisible ones. So then again, I want to thank you and see you in our next coffee talk. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Have a blessed weekend.
Same to you guys.
Janae.
Bye.
Terrific. Thank you.